to WEBITMD's brand new video cast, Bringing Clarity to Life and Business Decisions, a mini-series for business owners and entrepreneurs who are searching for conventional and maybe unconventional ways to up-level success in both their personal and professional lives. I'm your host, Danny Best, Marketing Director here at WEBITMD, and I am so excited to be launching this series today and to also be learning alongside you as we speak to different business owners, entrepreneurs, and all-around highly driven professionals on what it means to gain clarity and alignment for your personal and professional lives. We will also be exploring different exercises and approaches to how we show up to our day-to-day, and definitely some great tips and takeaways that you can start to use right away. So when we decided to start ideating on how our agency could bring value to a pretty saturated market like podcasts, videocasts, we knew we did not want to come out with episodes on topics like tactical tips for improving your SEO or insert an area of focus in your business. A lot of other agencies are out there doing that already, and they do it pretty well. So when we thought about what we could bring to this space, we knew we wanted to speak straight to business owners and entrepreneurs, and we knew we would be remiss if we did not speak to their current mental state, both professionally and personally. Yes, I am talking about the pandemic and its impact, but I'm also not. You see, in a study done by Small Business Economics, entrepreneurs are almost twice as likely to develop depression than the general public. Almost a third have ADHD as compared to 4% of the general population. And since 1999, there has been over a 30% increase in suicide amongst entrepreneurs. Those are pre-pandemic stats. Since the pandemic, 49% say their condition made it difficult to concentrate on their business. 30% say they became less responsive to emails and other communication. And 36% say they just put off challenging work because it's just too much. That is a drastic decrease across the board in instrumental pieces of owning and operating a business. Now, I truly believe that business owners and entrepreneurs are bred differently. They've got that hustle and that focus on a higher frequency than that some of us just don't have. But the facts are in the numbers here. And the facts are life and business have been impacted for some time. So when we decided to launch a mini-series on clarity in life and business, our approach was to take a step back from those tactical tips and start at the very foundational building blocks of life. And what's more foundational than our very breath? So, in our first episode entitled The Power of Breathwork, I will be joined by our CEO, Matan Danino, and Breathwork coach and e-commerce business owner, Carson Finkel, to talk about Breathwork as a powerful tool for business owners and entrepreneurs who are not only looking to manage stress and burnout, but also for aligning their personal and professional why, visualizing their goals, and gaining clarity on the steps to achieve those goals for greater success. If you like this episode, be sure to register for episode 2. Details are coming soon, and share us with a friend. All right, here we are with Carson Finkel of Create Meditation and, of course, our own Matan Danino. Good morning, guys. Welcome to episode 1.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So Carson, now I mentioned earlier that you are an e-commerce business owner yourself, but you also spend early mornings and evenings with clients holding breathwork sessions. We'll go a little bit deeper into that as we continue our conversation today. But I first wanted to back up and start with your why. What brought you to breathwork in your own life, and what transitioned you from a personal practice to something that you teach and share with others?
Yeah, great question. Well, thank you guys for having me on the show today. My normal job is running an e-commerce brand in the hat space. But while doing that, I definitely reached a burnout a little over 4 years ago. I had a crazy panic attack actually during my sleep. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, crying uncontrollably. I thought I'd lost my mind. It was a very, very scary moment. And it was the universe kind of bringing me to my knees and telling me, you got to look inward and make a change. So, I went on a pilgrimage of trying everything under the sun, called, Western medicine tests, figuring out what's going on with me. And in doing so, like my reading and teachings, I found this form of breath work that really had a profound impact on me. And I should take one step back. At the early stages of this pilgrimage, I had the great advice from a doctor who was trained in Eastern and Western medicine. He's like, hey, for your anxiety, you should really develop the skill of breathing. So it's something that we, don't really think about. We do, I believe, over 24,000 times a day. And then in doing so, reading a lot about breath work and learning a little bit the science behind it, which I can actually explain a little bit why. So as humans, our optimal rate of breathing is 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. So I tell people, don't worry about the half, either pick 5 or pick 6. But when we breathe that way, our body feels very in homeostasis. It feels calm. We feel centered. So it's just a very, short, quick thing I tell people. And if you're feeling anxious or kind of overwhelmed, just breathing in that rate will be very calming on the nervous system. And then when it comes to oxygen and CO2 and breath work, right now, if you're a healthy human, most of us are completely fine with oxygen. We're oxygen saturated 97, 98, 99%. Oxygen is never the issue. It's actually CO2. And it's kind of a misnomer. A lot of people think CO2 is this excess gas that we exhale when we breathe. But the CO2 is actually what is needed for us to use the oxygen in our body. Oxygen is attached to a hemoglobin, and that CO2 is actually dislodges the oxygen from the hemoglobin so we can use it. So a lot of breathwork training involves, certain breath holds and different types of breathing where you're actually training our bodies to handle a higher tolerance to CO2. And in doing so, you will become more oxygen efficient. So just a little background on what we're doing there with some of the breath work is we're becoming more oxygen efficient, which is great. I'm going to use more of that. But yeah, my journey for myself and then to be able to use it for, business owners and when I'm launching Create Meditation. I found this form of breath work. I did a session, had a huge impact on me. I trained to be a facilitator right at the beginning of COVID. And then I started doing free sessions for friends and family all through Zoom. People loved it where they started referring other people. Those people started referring people. People started sending me gifts. And then with my e-commerce branding background, I launched Create Meditation and it has grown quite a bit. And here we are a couple of years later. And like you said, I do sessions multiple times a day. And I absolutely love it.
That's wonderful. And I mean, talk about good timing. With the pandemic and everything, I imagine that's been something that people that you've worked with have needed exponentially, just trying to cope with what we've been going through for the last few years. So that's great. Matan, so you do breathwork with Carson.
Absolutely.
What prompted you to explore breathwork?
For me, I guess the journey wasn't as scientific, maybe as Carson's. For me, I just actually had an issue, which was being present. And I have that issue personally. I have that issue a little bit in business, but even on vacation, on a personal vacation, I think about what I have to do when I get back or what's happening in the business. And it's sort of like, hold on, I'm here now. I worked sort of hard to get to this vacation. I can't even enjoy it as much. And I felt that I've tried different things, quite frankly, to get better at being more sort of present in the moment. And I read a lot about it. Some things work for me, some things not. Maybe it's just how my brain operates. But breathwork really has helped. It allows me to be present, certainly during the sessions, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But even after, I feel for sure an effect immediately after, but definitely feel even lasting effects into the days or sort of week to come. I also do mini versions of the session I do with Carson throughout the week. I try to at least. But for me, like the presentness and just being sort of in the moment, grounding me, it has been huge. And so as you guys know, I run the agency and there's lots that come at me, sort of day to day, good, bad, little fires. It's hard. It's hard to navigate that. But I certainly think breathwork for me has been what's allowed me to be present, stay grounded. And that's really my why.
Yeah. And you mentioned, not being able to turn it off on vacation. And I know that that's something that every single business owner, entrepreneur can relate to, is turning it off and being in the moment. And I think that I was smiling while you're talking because I was just thinking of you as in my boss hat. And you don't normally strike me as somebody who would turn to meditation or visualization for specific help with your business.
Sure.
So I am a little curious, your first session with Carson, did you find it was hard? Yeah. It was hard to take the time to do so. Was it challenging to slow down and be intentional with your thoughts and your breathing? Just kind of walk us through how you felt exploring breath work for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Carson's a good coach. I'll start with that, and he'll speak more to that. But I must say, I'm not an anti. I'm not someone. I try a lot of things in life. I'm very, very open. It's kind of hard to make me feel awkward or in a weird situation. But it certainly had a sort of a woo-woo, almost spiritual appeal to it that maybe doesn't suit me all that well, or it's not sort of aligned with all that I believe in on a day-to-day. However, I said, you know what? Let me go for it. Let me try something. What's the worst that can happen? You do one session, and it's very guided. You wouldn't think that it is, but he walks you through things. There's a music element to it. It's a very transitional sort of flow. And I found it very enjoyable. And I must say that even after the first session, it's kind of ironic, Carson, but probably the first session is where I felt the most impact. And you're supposed to become a little bit more advanced over time. Now I'm getting a bit more advanced, I feel. But the first session for me, for sure, I felt immediate relief and impact. So I really enjoyed it the first time. And then sort of continued on from there. So it was, it's something I want to stick with. I think it has lasting effects as you get a little bit more advanced. I haven't experienced all that yet, but being 7-10 sessions in, I mean, I certainly think it's something that I'll stick with.
Awesome.
Yeah, and Matan touching on the woo-woo-ness of it is something I love talking to people about, because most of the people I work with are business owners and entrepreneurs. I work with a couple of doctors and lawyers, and these people are not woo-woo people. But when you get down to, that we're breathing and, bringing that mindfulness, and they can see the impact right away and continue coming back, because it's for everyone. And I think my goal is to bring it more to the business people, because those are the ones we need to kind of come more down to the present moment.
For sure.
So yeah, no, it's, and I think it's starting to become a little more mainstream and not seen as, the spiritual bucket. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Talking about sessions, I would love to learn more about, your framework, your process, how you enter into these spaces with clients who may have that in the back of their mind, I'll try this, but it feels weird. How do you bring them at ease and get them into the session where they see such impact even on the first go round?
Yeah, great question. And I should say, lucky enough to be brought on as an advisor to some accelerator programs where it's kind of positioned in a way where it's these groups of business owners. So it's in a light of oh, this is for business. This is not some external thing. So, but my process is there's a questionnaire at the beginning where you fill out, kind of currently what's on your mind, a place in nature you feel very connected to. And I have someone fill out an I am statement, I am blank, and I'm going to create blank. Then there's an intention, which we go in with. And then we have a peak value. And what all these questions are building upon is it gives us a framework for what we want our subconscious to work on. Because a big part of these sessions is we are reprogramming your subconscious with new beliefs and values and states of being that we want to become. And hence it's called Create Meditation, because there's an element of visualizing and creating the life we want. And that could be from a business side or a personal side. But at the beginning, you fill out this questionnaire. We go over those questions, and then the flow of the session. And I should also say, as a questionnaire, the part I think that separates this, that gets people a little more intrigued to do a session, is you're not breathing towards some meditation sound bath music. You get to send me 4 or 5 songs that bring you joy, 4 or 5 songs that move you. So worst case is, I love somebody put it's worst case is you're just breathing the music you love. You should give it a try. So, But the flow of the session, after we go over your answers, those instructions for your subconscious, we go in at the beginning. There's 3 pillars to the session. The first is connect. And at the connecting portion, I'm guiding you through some mind-body connection just with my voice. And what we're doing there is, people don't know this, that our heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain does to the heart. So when people talk about that knowing, that intuition, that gut feeling that we all sometimes feel, that is a very, very real thing. So at the beginning, we're tapping into that mind-body connection. Then we go on a nature journey, and that's based on what you felt in the questionnaire. And I'm going to walk you through your 5 senses, your sight, sound, smell, touch, and feel, and taste, in a place you feel very connected to in nature. And what we're doing is we're priming your visualization muscles in a place you can really drop into. And then we get to the second pillar, which is the breathing portion. And the breathing, it's definitely an active form of breathing, and you breathe for roughly 25, 30 minutes, and it's to that playlist that I create for you. In that breathing, you're going to get to a very elevated emotional state. And while you're breathing, I'm layering in these affirmations and things we want to work on from the questionnaire. So without you knowing it, you're just going to be breathing, and then that monkey mind just goes away. And I'm layering in things that are really just like a direct download into your subconscious. And I hear reported from people that sometimes weeks later, they'll hear my voice in the middle of the day. And I'm like, great, like that's what we want. You want that playlist of these things that these new beliefs and embodiments we want to be. So yeah, you're going to have this active form of breathing, get this elevated emotional state. And then the third pillar is the create. So you're going to be in this state, and then I'm going to guide you through visualizing the life you want to create in your life. And I should tie this back in to the questions and kind of the reprogramming, and what the breath can show us is we really want to try to find someone's North Star. You know, where do you really want to go in your life? And that can change in different chapters, you know, depending where you're at. So finding out, okay, where's my North Star? And then also, most importantly, is why do I want to go there? And the breath has a great way of really bringing some clarity onto those things. So just like an added benefit of kind of part of the session that ends up happening. So in summary, high level, that's kind of what a session looks like.
It sounds like you move through some pretty intense and pivotal parts of learning about yourself and where you want to go. You mentioned monkey brain. Would you elaborate on that? I'd love to understand what that, like the monkey brain going away, what does that mean?
Yeah. So we all have that. If I just everyone just be like, all right, don't think about anything. You know, you're going to sit there and your mind's going to start, you know, going, and you are in a active beta brainwave state. That's during the day. That's how most of us are operating. And with the breath, and I should say in any form of mindfulness, in any practice, anytime you give your mind the same rhythm of breathing over and over and over again, your mind's going to start to feel safe. That monkey mind, that high beta brainwave state is going to start to lower down. The next step, you get into alpha. And sometimes from alpha, you can get into theta. In those low brainwave states, that monkey mind starts to feel safe. It starts to shut down. So I like to say at the beginning of the breath work, everyone, no matter how many times you've done it, you're going to be in your own head. You're going to be breathing and you'll be like, am I doing this breathing right? I hear music. I hear Carson's voice. Like that chatter that we all feel, that's always going to be there at the beginning. But what's great about this form of breath is you just focus on the breath, and it's almost like magic, just like that monkey mind goes away, and you drop into a state where, like I said, that beta down to alpha into theta. And that crossover between alpha and theta is where you get into that kind of hypnotic state where we get to do the reprogramming. So from a science standpoint, we really are putting in those inputs, those new beliefs, those new states of being we want to embody. We're dropping those in there in a state where your brain and your subconscious can actually receive it.
Wow, that's incredible. It's basically getting rid of that fight or flight and freeze and getting us back down to base level. That's very cool that you can do that just through the power of breath. So my question with that too is, I mean, obviously it sounds like there are some great benefits, shutting down the active part of your brain. And I feel this all the time when I try to do the 5-minute meditation, and I'm just in there and I realize I'm making my shopping list for Sunday. And then you're told to, don't scold yourself. Just let that thought roll away and keep going. But then the thoughts keep rolling in. But what would getting to that base state, that quiet spot where you're finding that North Star, maybe you could, elaborate on what that looks like for certain people, what maybe some clients have said based on these sessions with you of benefits and possibilities that breathwork brought for not only their physical and mental, also their professional, but just kind of understanding what kind of takeaways that gave getting to that state.
Yeah, great question. The number one repeated thing I hear from people is clarity. And it's something about when we tap into that part of ourselves with the breath really shows us things that we otherwise, wouldn't be able to have access to and see. And it comes in a couple versions. One, and again, a big part of it is that beginning questionnaire. A lot of times people don't take the time to slow down and answer some questions where they get to look inward, like, what do I really want? Is this where I want to go? And when you're breathing, sometimes you're shown things. So it's like visions, so to speak, of like things in the future. And I like to say that the breath, it's almost showing us these little breadcrumbs of where we actually want to go. And I've heard reported that, so at the end, you are visualizing, what you want to create in your life. And I've heard all sorts of things, amazing things actually. And I love it when I get to hear months later that these visions came true to every last little detail. That's what lights me up. And then other times, if people that are really business focused, it's almost like they get a download of a to-do list. They know exactly, like at the end, they're just like, I saw the next exact 5 things in order that I need to do right now for my business to get to where I want to go. So clarity. And the other one, to echo what Matan said, and this is probably my personal favorite, is being more present. I know it sounds a little cliche that people say, like, in the present moment is really all we have. And a lot of times entrepreneurs, business owners, we are amazing at doing. We can crush to-do lists and we're always worried about, like, what's the next thing? Where am I going with my business? But we're not very good at just being. And the breath and slowing down and mindfulness. And I like to say the breath is the gateway to the present moment. And in doing so, bringing that presence in your life, it has just so many benefits. And, when you're done with work and you're with your family and your friends, you're actually with your family and friends. You're not worried about that thing, that lingering work, that's gone. Like, you want to be here in the now and living in the moment. And the other one I will say, in this correlates with presence, is time. Something about practicing mindfulness, that even it might feel like you're taking away time by taking that 10 or 15 minutes. When you slow down your brain waves from that beta into alpha into theta, time elongates and you will become more living in the present. It's more enriched, you're more aware, and that just pays dividends across the board, where it feels like you gain more time. It's hard to explain, and but when you feel it, it. Like, there's certain times when you're really in the zone and you feel like time is, like flying by, or there's times when you like look at the clock and it's going by super slow. Something about pulling in the breath and mindfulness, you're just more present. And for me, it feels like I have a lot more time. So those are my probably top 3 takeaways for people. I got a couple benefits to throw in there as well, for sure. I mean,
absolutely.
You mentioned clarity. Definitely, I feel more clear. The action steps that I've gotten within the session to dictate what I'm about to do, or I was a little unclear on, and then I literally execute those in the next few days or week to come. I've sort of visioned that, during the session, creating it, and then all of a sudden it comes to be. But the clarity of defining what that is, that mental clarity is huge. We talked about being more present during the session, but again, the lasting effects of that for me, I already mentioned. That's huge. I think what's important here also, Carson, is not just there's a mental piece of it. There's also physical. I mean, I feel stuff physically during the session.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is bizarre. And bizarre because it was awkward to me in the beginning. Now I'm sort of, it's becoming part of what I know is to be expected. But my fingers tingle, my legs sometimes have a little sort of jolt or shake to them unexpectedly. They sort of cramp up sometimes, my hands. It's very interesting. Carson also mentioned the questionnaire a couple of times that I've had to fill out before every session. He forgot to mention it's the same questionnaire every session, which is very interesting. There's probably some rhyme and reason to that, which I don't know, but I do know that every time before a session, I have to think about these same questions, and my answers have been vastly different. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, I feel great, I'm in a great mood, and so I'm coming into the session with energy, enthusiasm, etc. Other times, maybe I had a rough day. I happen to do these sessions after work, so it's very interesting how these questions can differ, and sort of your mindset going into them can differ. And then, like I said, what comes out of that mentally is huge. So I think that part's super interesting to me. And I've just experienced those benefits, both mentally and physically. I'm leaving an hour or so, slightly less, in breathing, physically feeling a sense of energy, and then mentally feeling huge clarity.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought up the physical component, because it's definitely,
it's real.
It's an active form of breath, and you're changing your body chemistry a lot. And I'll explain a little bit of like a little science of what's going on. That our bodies, and I should say, like, bring in for the woo-woo, or people that look at it as woo-woo, is like one of the smallest things we know of in the universe is the atom. And the atom is just 99.9999% space and energy. So all we are is space and energy, everything around us. And our bodies store so much physical and emotional trauma in our bodies. And this breath has just an amazing way of letting all that go. So when Matan talked about kind of like the body sensations, like a wiggle or a shake, that's great, because your body's just letting go of whatever we're holding on to. And that kind of gives us that more energy, and like letting go of that, we can fill up then now with all the good energy we want, the love, the gratitude, the joy, the inspiration. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Matan, because there's a physical component that is very, definitely, it's very real.
Definitely.
I mean, for myself, from my experience, I'm someone that deals with a lot of anxiety, and I just have an anxious mind in general. And my mind is a very powerful thing in not good ways sometimes. And it's interesting how breath work becomes the gateway for different areas of your body to release. Like you were saying, like, if there's the thing where if you look at, 5 things you can see, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can touch, like those kinds of bringing you back to the present, it does nothing unless you first tell your breath, or you first focus on your breath and how it comes in and how it comes out. I find that in myself when I'm starting to have an anxiety attack, I can look around and I can smell and I can hear, but if I haven't first focused on my breath to get me there, it's not going to release what's starting to boil up inside me. So it's so interesting that, we don't focus more on our breath in the day-to-day as a normal thing, because it is the gateway to clarity and presence and releasing things that don't feel good. So it's so interesting to hear.
It's our number one life source. You stop breathing for 4 minutes, like, hey, you're gone. So very true. Very true.
Yeah. And so you guys being here, being the busy professionals that you are, I think definitely helps, but I can still hear a viewer in the background saying like, oh, well, that's all well and good, but I don't have time to meditate like this. And I don't know I can't get started with that. I can't even go to the gym. So, Carson, I know you started to talk about like when you make the time, it creates more time. But is there, expanding on that a little bit too, but also thinking about what are some, really low lift ways that people can enter into this space that it's hard to rebuttal with, well, I just don't have the time for that.
Yeah, great question. It's a common thing. People say like, oh, I don't have time, and going back to what I said before, when you make that 5, 10, 15 minutes to just pause and actually, like I said, to be versus do, because we all are like business owners, entrepreneur, we can do all day. That's our default. It's like, and when we're not doing and we're not grinding, it can feel kind of like uncomfortable. Like I should be doing something, or the feeling a lot of like not feeling you're enough. Like I'm not doing enough. It takes time to combat that and put that at bay, so that when you take that 5, 10 minutes, you're going to be more present. And that time that you may feel that you took away from doing work, I promise you will gain more time and you become more efficient and more present and have a more impact on your business. And I guess I can pull that into the very, very first thing I ask someone when I start to work with them, if they've heard of the Champagne Tower analogy. And the Champagne Tower analogy is, most of the time for people, we put ourselves last on our to-do list. It's like work comes first, friends come first, family comes first, and we always put ourselves last. And I like to flip that on its head by you are the top of the Champagne Tower. And I'm very big on you choosing to fill up your own cup first. And in doing so, your cup's going to fill up and overflow, and it's going to fill up the cups closest to you in your life. Their cups are going to fill up, and then it has a positive cascading effect in society. And you're not being selfish by doing that. You're just choosing self-care, and you're going to show up as the best version of you, and for work, family, friends, and all areas of your life. So taking that, I don't have the time. I promise you that 5, 10, 15 minutes of mindfulness, it's going to fill up your cup, and you're going to be more present. You're going to gain more time. And in terms of like tools, things that you can do like right now, quick takeaways of like, I for people that like, I don't know where to get started, I think all mindfulness is great. All the apps, like whatever you want to like dive into, try it out, what feels good for you. But a couple things you don't even need an app. And going back to what I said before, and this is my favorite form of just kind of breathing and mindfulness, is training your body to breathe in that either 5 in, 5 out, or 6 in, 6 out. And if you're feeling anxious or you need just a pause and want to be centered, you can just grab your phone and go to the stopwatch and just breathe at that cadence over and over again, just 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And it's amazing what happens to your mind and your body of slowing down, becoming more present. So again, just practicing that cadence. And I should say 99% of the time, you should be breathing in and out through your nose. So if you can practice breathing in through your nose, out through your nose. If not, in through your nose, out through your mouth, totally fine. Other tools you can definitely take with you right now, box breathing. This is really big with the military. A lot of people I know do this before giving a big presentation to really center themselves and calm down the nerves. And box breathing, it is 5 in. So in for 5, hold, out for 5, hold, and you repeat that over and over. In for 5, hold, out for 5, hold. And on the hold, you're doing 5 seconds as well. So it's in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5, hold for 5. You do that a couple minutes, 5 minutes, you will go from a very active, any type of sympathetic feeling. It's really going to bring you into the parasympathetic, thinking of it as your parachute, your rest and digest. So those are my 2 go-tos. And then the third one, if you have trouble sleeping, and I do this sometimes, my mind's, racing, it's the 4-7-8 breath. And that is, you're going to be in for 4, hold for 7, and out for 8. Wow. And that has quite a magic touch when you're lying in bed and your mind is racing. Just try it. You go in for 4, hold for 7, and out for 8. And again, for me, I go that into the nose and out through the mouth. Those 3 things. And it's amazing. If you train on the 5 in, 5 out, and 6 in, 6 out, and you do that over and over again, your body will start to naturally breathe that way. So without even knowing it, your autonomic nervous system is going to be more calm, because you're training it to breathe that way normally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point to bring back to business owners and how, they operate in their business. I feel like you said, when you're not present, when we just have that grind, we just keep going and we don't stop to think. If we do stop to think, we feel like, oh, I should be doing something,
Right.
working in the business instead of on the business, like all those phrases. So if I, bringing those tips and tricks back to business owners specifically, maybe Matan, you can give some insight into this as Carson's mentee in this perspective. How have you brought these, the box breathing, the in for 5,
Right.
out for 5, have you brought those kinds of tips and tricks into your everyday, with sales or internally? How is that correlated into your business?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, box breathing is probably the one of the three that I've taken away and implemented myself. I try to block out 5, 10, 15 minutes on my calendar to do that. Even if you do that for 3 minutes, honestly, Carson, I've noticed a difference. Sometimes I do that before a sales call. It feels good, sort of gets me level set, grounded. I focus on my notes and I go into the call with good energy, focus. And I think other people see that. Have you ever been on a call where somebody's super aggressive or you kind of have that tone coming at you, you get kind of defensive, you pull back. But the other times when people are coming with a good energy, with a good sort of vibe, if you will, the other party is very open. They receive better. They're actually listening to what you're saying. And I think that's huge. If you think about part of my role is sort of business development here, I'm not trying to sell people stuff they don't want. I'm trying to determine if we actually can help their business grow. And if so, and we're a good fit and they like me and they like the rest of the team, then yeah, let's work together, of course. And I think people see that. And I think some of the breath work and specifically the box breathing, Carson, to me has been impactful. And I've used that. I also have a team here, and as we continue to grow as a team, people rely on me. I have to make decisions that support others. There's a trust factor internally. And I think with some of the breath work and some of sort of the grounding effect that I've got out of it, there's a real sense of honesty that comes out. And I feel sometimes in business, unfortunately, that's not always the case internally. And there's internal drama, or the person who you sort of work for, the boss, so to speak, is kind of in its own island. I don't want that. I like a very open kind of culture. People come to me and they feel, I think, quite disarmed, in the way that they speak with me. And it's just, again, it's a vibe overall that I want. It's a culture that I want. I want people to enjoy being here. I want people to feel warm with me, and we're all humans. We're all trying to grow and become successful together. And why not? Right. And I feel sometimes business has somewhat of a shrewd sort of angle to it. And that's how you grow and sort of step on others to get bigger. I just don't really connect with that at all. So for me, breathwork aligns really well with that. I want to attract people who also believe in that. And honestly, the people who don't, I don't really want them. I don't want them working here. I don't want them as clients. I just, I want to have a distance, and I think that's okay. So for me, I definitely have seen effect on the business side, both from a sales perspective and internally, just, managing other human beings.
This is wonderful, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that starting out a new mini series with an episode, it's a little bit more unconventional for business, like finding your breath work is, probably something that you wouldn't start with, but I think it's the most important, and hearing from two very successful businessmen, open up and be vulnerable and honest about their experience with how they got here and why they're doing what they're doing, I think will empower other business owners to do the same. So I really appreciate you guys being willing to talk through these questions and have these conversations, and I think it'll be super helpful. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is, I love talking about this stuff, and hopefully more of it can come to the corporate space, because I feel it's very much needed.
It's probably
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think, Danny, to touch on what you said, it is an unconventional sort of topic, and we're going to develop a series that gets a little bit more sort of tactical and, business-like, sales-like, if you will. But starting with this is important, because it is sort of the baseline to then what creates, in my opinion, the successful tactics. Yes. And the clarity on where you're going and the business planning and so on. I found sort of benefits to it, and I wanted to share that. So I was happy to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a mindfulness in life and in business that propels everything you do with your business decisions.
Totally.
So yeah, thank you. Carson, where can we find you? Where can people find you if they want to explore sessions with you or learn more about what you do? Tell us where you're at.
Yeah. From a social side, I think the best thing is LinkedIn. So first name Carson, last name Finkel. And then email, you can email me at carson@createmeditation.com. I'll get back to you there. But otherwise, yeah, I hope you both and everyone listening on this call have a wonderful day and bring a lot of joy and love and peace and gratitude in their life from a personal and business standpoint. And yeah, keep breathing out there.